for disasters. So it's with a great deal of pleasure that I get to introduce to you today Mr. Craig Fugate, Administrator of FEMA. Thank you, sir, for being here.
My time will be short. Given everything we've gotten on, you would probably wonder why I'm even back in D.C. I got back in last night. I'm actually going to go down to Tucson River and talk about hurricane preparedness, because as much as I've asked the Weather Service to postpone hurricane season with all the fires, floods, and tornadoes, they said it's a certain date that it will start June 1st. I want to hit 4 broad areas, because I think, when we talk about communications and we talk about the public, oftentimes I almost get a sense we pit one against the other in how we describe things. I think we talk a lot about social media at the expense of the broadcasters. I think we talk a lot about public safety communications, but then we come back to broadband. And then there's one group that we never talk about, but they were the ultimate backups, and they were the originators of what we call social media, and that's the amateur radio operators. So, yeah, you guys are here. I didn't know that, but that didn't matter. I think when we talk about earthquakes in particular, because of all the types of disasters we face, they're the ones that have the tendency to do the most damage to the infrastructure that creates the longest periods of outages. And then finally, I have got to come back to amateur radio. The initial communications out of Haiti, some of the communications at various parts, and we go back and forth across these disasters, is volunteers using assigned frequencies that they're allocated, their own equipment, their own money, nobody pays them. We're the first ones oftentimes getting word out in the critical first hours and first days as the rest of the systems came back up. And I think that there's a tendency that because we have done so much to build infrastructure and resiliency in all of our other systems, we have tended to dismiss that role when everything else fails. Amateur radio oftentimes is our last line of defense. And I think at times we get so sophisticated and we have gotten so used to the reliability and resilience in our wireless and wired and our broadcast industry and all of our public safety communications that we can never fathom that they'll fail. They do. They have. They will. And I think a strong amateur radio community that's plugged into these plans, most of the time they're going to be bored because there's not a lot they're going to be doing that people aren't doing with Twitter and Facebook and everything else. But when you need amateur radio, you really need them. So 4 broad areas, all equally important, all key to one mission, and that is meeting the needs of survivors.
Particular vertical. But I think what we're talking about is diversity, so that you've got multiple platforms that are capable of stepping in. If one of them is affected, then amateur radio can step in, and presumably they're not relying on the same facilities, or they're less likely to be. I guess in a really, really bad situation, everybody ends up getting funneled through the same fiber optic line that gets cut, and then all bets are off. But it's if you've got more DNA, so to speak, a bigger gene pool playing in the solution, right? Am I right in saying that that's what we're talking about?
I concur with that, Jeff. I think you're all right. Redundancy would probably be more than one of the same type of system, perhaps, and then diversity. Maybe that's what I'm really referring to when I'm talking about, HF, satellite, digital, and semaphores, and whatever else is required.
Right. Okay.
I also agree that diversity really speaks to it much better, and I also wanted to add that the California Emergency Management Agency does have an amateur radio system actually at the command center, just for that diversity as well.
I also wanted to mention as we keep bringing up amateur radio here, it's important that those amateur bands be protected over the long run. We have a smaller, we're chopping up the spectrum more and more with all the great things that we have, all this capability, but it's starting to encroach on some of these amateur bands, and we're wanting to divide that up a little bit more. And it's important over time that we balance what we do with the new technologies with the protection of those frequencies that amateur bands have.
pick up cellular phones. We have a NEBS plan, a Network Emergency Management Structure within AT&T that is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. One of the things that we do is that, and one of the major things is, and it was mentioned earlier, and I'm glad to hear about amateur radios, okay? We have still amateur radios. We still have people that can actually key. You know, people don't Morse code. Who can read it on the other end is another question, but we actually have people that can still do Morse code. We also have the capability to send email over the over the amateur radios, okay? We have become a society where information is critical. To get that information, you have to have communications. We take it very seriously that communications have to be up as quickly and as fast as possible. So we will try to get into an area, repair the capability, bring that communications up, have it start running again so that people can get information. One of the things you suffer is when you go into a disaster area, you may have an area that has very limited communication. First responders have to go in. When they go into an area, what they need is communication.